ain't nothing, I ain't bothered, not a problem. Haters hate, another day in dollar. Keep your money, rather have you pay the homage. Delay the profit, we go freeway on it. Yeah, don't ruin nothing, copper. If you need reminded, holla at your Siri, ask who I'm. You can find them on the app. Yeah, they call me Peaky Blinders. You bet your bottom dollar, I'm a classic. 64 Impala, me, I been the plug. Plead the fifth when the name it get brought up. Real legend never die. Still with the business, you should cry, let it lie. Side for an eye, that's Korea suicide. Tell her one time, forever in my prime. They remember mine.
We're live in Venice, Los Angeles at the Olympics closing ceremony LA28 Announcement Gig as the Red Hot Chili Peppers have just finished their incredible headline performance. And we're here with frontman Anthony Kiedis. Anthony, please tell us how you're feeling right now and what can we expect from LA28 in a few years?
It's an amazing feeling. It's such an honor for us to be playing here again in our hometown. Our first record came out in '84, the same year as the last Olympics held in LA. So to be a part of it this time around is special. Los Angeles is a unique place. I love the ocean. I love the palm trees. I love the people. And we can't wait to welcome everyone in a few years for the 2028 Olympics.
Well, what an amazing performance by the Red Hot Chili Peppers as we close out our coverage from the 2024 Olympics closing ceremony with the announcement of the 2028 Olympics here in Los Angeles. In other news, citizens in Venice Beach affected by the troublesome T-pose virus just a few weeks ago seem to be recovering, and citizens are returning to their daily lives. If you're still showing symptoms, please call our emergency helpline. Recent data also indicates that Colossal Order's recent patch is helping to resolve Venice's homeless crisis, as citizens are now starting to find homes within the area. So that's all for the 10 o'clock news. I'm your host, Ron Sanders. Good evening.
Hello everyone, welcome back to episode 3 of my Los Angeles series, as I finally complete the Venice Beach build. In today's episode, at last we've said goodbye to Thunderstorm. All of this footage today is all fairly recent, so I now have all of the amazing new mods and assets available to us, plus some brand new assets we've created especially for the series, including Ploppable Citizens, functional activity areas, some assembly style assets created within Editor, and 3 new decal packs. These assets are all available from today, the decals on PDX Mods and the others as a local install only through Discord and Patreon. But stick around till the end of the video to see them in more detail, and I'll get them into Venice Beach. I hope you enjoy this much longer video today as we conclude Venice. It's going to be jam-packed, pretty much all detailing from start to finish, and we're going to try and get Venice as close to real life as possible. I'll be giving the Broadwalk a major renovation, adding some cool new points of interest in and around the beach, and to finish off the episode you'll also see a brand new build as featured in today's opening cinematics as I recreate a very recent event from real life, a gig live from Venice Beach from the Olympics closing ceremony. Before we get started, a friendly reminder that if you enjoy the video, please consider liking and commenting. This really does help with the algorithm. If you enjoy what I do, you can also support me over on Patreon or by becoming a channel member here on YouTube. Okay, so we'll start off by finally getting some palm trees into the build. Using the pine trees previously just really annoyed me so damn much, but these palm trees, they look so beautiful, and they are accurate, of course, to real life, and what a difference they make. So of course we are now a post-thunderstorm. This had to be the first thing I got in there. You know, the palm trees had only just been released at this stage. I also of course have all of my new decal and surface packs as their finalised versions of the ones you have on PDX Mods. I think I mentioned last episode that some of the ones I used back in episode 2, these were like test versions, you know, they still needed a bit more development. So I think I'm just going to delete everything and start again with the PDX Mods versions. But you know, the results will be nice and long term, so I think it is worth the effort. But looking back at the last episode, there was an absolute ton of surface work I included within the video, perhaps a little bit too much. So I'm not going to put you through that again. We're not going to go through and show you a whole bunch of surfaces, so I'm just going to kind of skip ahead and you'll just see the builds with all of these new surfaces and decals in. You can probably tell throughout these 3 episodes, you know, I did get quite obsessive about this build and, you know, trying to get it as close to real life as possible. And I think this one is up there. So I ended up actually referring to Google Earth and placing a lot of these trees in their exact locations, which, you know, is pretty silly looking back. It's probably a step too far, but, you know, we're here now, may as well keep on going. Looking at Google Earth, I also noticed the grassy areas in the park were a little hilly, and you know, the grass texture is all a bit too plain for my liking, so I start to scuff up the ground, raising it in parts. This also reveals the cliff texture, which, you know, adds a nice grey rocky looking surface, and I am using Chameleon's map theme for this. Also, a method I've used many times now is I'll be sinking trees and bushes into the ground to act as grass sprites. You know, these will just add a bit more interest to the build. For the majority of this episode, it is going to be trying to get Venice as close to real life as possible. So back in episode 1, which was filmed a lot in January, and episode 2, a lot of which was filmed in April, this just wasn't possible to be able to create builds as close to real life. But it is now. You know, I think it just shows how far this game has come along in such a short period of time. You know, recent mods like Recolor, and even the new Road Builder mod, which I am yet to try at the moment, but I hopefully will get to it soon. But, you know, it's all just insane stuff. The game really is getting so good already, and you know, we haven't even got custom assets yet, which is just mad thinking, you know, where are we going to be in a couple of years? It's going to be so insane. I can't wait. Okay, so next I can introduce you to the first of 3 decal packs, which I've released alongside this episode on PDX Mods. So these are my asphalt patches, and they come in both light and dark, with a whole bunch of different variations. Some patches are slightly newer, a little less roughed up, and then others have a lot more cracks and damage. Looking back, you know, I think we could do with a few more larger sizes, but you can combine them to create larger ones for now. But look, they are a great addition, and they're a good match of both light and dark vanilla surfaces. And I'm going to add a bunch here to this basketball court. Again, just going way overboard with this court, but you know, I just can't help myself. This will be 9 new decal and surface packs I've released over these past few weeks, alongside all of the ones which have been up on PDX Mods for a few months now. I think I am going to be taking a break from creating too many more decals for the time being, instead only really creating them if I need something specifically for a build, at least until official support arrives. We can't be too far now. So next up, I'm going to add in the Muscle Beach building. Now this is a bright orange and pretty iconic looking building on the main boardwalk opposite the gym. I wanted to get this quite as close to the original as possible, so I've created, you know, a whole bunch of decals just for this. I have worked on quite a few iterations off screen, just looking through a whole bunch of potential buildings, kind of stitching them together, see which ones worked with each other. So this is the final version I went with, and I think there's probably about 4 or 5 buildings combined here. But this building, it's only possible to do this thanks to the recolor mod by Yen Yang. Without this mod, I wouldn't even been able to renovate this entire Broadwalk. It is just so powerful. But look, there are going to be quite a few notifications throughout, not just this building, but Venice as well, for no road access, no electric, no water. I'd rather have these, but look, I need the building to look exactly how I want it. A few notifications here or there doesn't bother me too much. If there is someone out there willing to develop a mod to allow us to turn off these icons, this would be very much appreciated. So I'm going to change this whole building to orange. It's amazing how something as simple like a colour change can just completely transform a building into something completely different. But just turning the building to orange, it isn't quite enough to replicate the Muscle Beach building entirely. So I've created a few more decals to help complete the look. For example, creating the exact logo for the brand, and a bunch of posters which I've all taken from real life examples. So as I mentioned in the previous video, Muscle Beach is also famous as the gym Arnold Schwarzenegger used to train in back in his youth. He is now immortalised in a mural on the side of the building, and it even has his signature and a couple of nice palm trees. So of course I had to create these as custom decals too. The whole building, it just came out so well. I'm so happy with it. I think the extra effort was worth it, just to make this building really stand out on the Broadwalk. I also decided to renovate this alleyway too, behind the main Broadwalk. I think originally I just had a vanilla alley road here, a bit of parking, nothing special. But we can do a bit better than that. So instead use invisible roads and surfaces and just make this look completely custom built. But it comes out so good. And it's just such a contrast to the main Broadwalk as well. Just one street away on the Broadwalk, it's very touristy, there's lots going on. This alleyway is just behind a few buildings, and I want it to feel very run down, very grimy, I guess not a place you'd really want to walk down alone at night. I'm going to really scuff it up, lots of decals, the stains, tyre marks, cracks, damage, just make it look as awful as possible. I also add a lot of leakage decals to the buildings. They need to be dirty and old too. When I created these, I really wasn't expecting so many people to love using them on buildings the way they do, the way Moose keeps on reminding me about. I thought these were, mainly to be used on the floor, but seeing everyone add them so much to buildings, I need to do that too, right? So we're just going to plaster a whole bunch of leakage all over the buildings and just make them look a lot more grimy. So whilst looking at the alley on Google Earth, I also saw these lines separating the space for vehicles and pedestrians, so I'm going to add these into using net lanes. I think these really help complete the look of the space, help it feel a bit more unique. So you'll see me today using a whole bunch of graffiti all over Venice. I really want this place to look super arty, super creative, and I go really heavy on these throughout the whole build. And now's a good time to introduce you to the second decal pack I've released today on PDX Mods, the Modders Graffiti Pack, dedicated to a lot of the wonderful modders within our community. There's 12 different graffiti here, and I think they came out pretty cool. And I think better quality than the original ones I put out on the launch of the extra mods. At least these will give us a bit more variety. I think seeing the extra 3.0 graffiti everywhere is just a little too repetitive now. The extra gang really have been a menace to all of your cities, so I do apologise for that. So what I'm going to try and do throughout this next part of the build is to try and make all of these buildings pretty unique, like, they're an actual business. So by the end of the episode, I want to be able to say, like, this one is the convenience shop, that's the skate shop, that's the tattoo parlour, this is the tourist shop, that's Muscle Beach. So, it is going to require quite a bit of extra work, but it really is going to help the Broadwalk to stand out and feel totally unique. So next I'm going to add my concrete tile surfaces over the top of the pedestrian road on the Broadwalk, just so it matches the beach park surfaces. This wasn't actually possible back in episode 2, which was pre-PDX mods. It was only a few months later that Triton Supreme added this functionality, and I'm going to chuck an absolute ton of decals all over this once again to make it all feel a bit more dirty and worn, as this does get quite a bit of heavy footfall. So I think I start off making this shop to be like a, like a tourist shop. It's going to sell a whole bunch of gifts and clothes and things all aimed at tourism. Make it a little hippie looking too, adding the Venice graffiti to the awnings. I love this vanilla building as well. It's definitely one of my favourite commercial premises. It's such a unique style from the others, and it has this like mesh on the upper level, which is very, very cool. I'm going to try and keep this part very similar to real life too, extending the orange colour which comes from Muscle Beach, and merging in a few row homes. Of course, I am looking at Google Earth again, and trying to be as close to match as possible. But, if you don't use Google Earth when playing Cities Skylines, I really would recommend it. Of course, you don't need to be recreating, a one-to-one build like I am here, but it is still so helpful for inspiration. It can also help, if you find a building you like, and they think, how can I recreate this from existing assets? There are a bunch of different assets I can merge together and form a new building. So for Venice, I do end up having quite a number of what I would say are miscellaneous decals. We've got the ones for Muscle Beach, got ones for the gig later on in the episode, a few small shop signs, posters, and even these cool American flags, but none of which was really enough to create a totally unique pack for each of these. For the time being, I have ended up bundling them all together into a combined pack. So this is my LA decal pack, which is available right now on PDX Mods. So even if you're not building LA, still going to be a whole ton of useful stuff in there for you. I think the USA flags in particular are going to be great for a lot of people doing USA builds. So checking Google Earth again, the road here, it's like a red cobblestone road, so I think I should build this in as well. I do try a few different options, but I end up settling on layering two different surfaces together to get the look I want. I use a cobblestone surface, and then I add El Gendo's coloured surfaces on top, and then of course I do add in quite a lot of decals all over it. Across the road I get started on a shop for the US Polo Association. This is a shop which is actually on Venice Beach. And I was like, you know what, the logo is going to be pretty easy to turn this into a decal and to use it on the building. So yeah, it is quite simple, but a single logo decal, it really does make this building feel a lot more unique. So next up, I do add some of my decals to these shops to give us a tattoo shop, a convenience shop, and a massage parlour. On Venice Broadwalk, there's also a whole bunch of small independent businesses. The majority wouldn't be well-known brands. We do have a lot of tourist shops, convenience shops, and clothing shops, so I do want to add in a lot more of these small shops into Venice. I'm just looking through a whole bunch of different buildings here just to see what I can use. And I ended up finding a beach property home which has these archways out the back. And I think I could work with this, we could do something pretty cool. So I do use the sub-element remover just to strip it back to the main mesh. So I'll add in some fences alongside each of the archways just to help divide out an area for each of the shops. I'm going to use some of the custom signage and brands to help give each of them their own identity. And they'll help give me a theme of the shop too, which will help with propping. There's a whole bunch of pretty cool brands which come with the base game. Ashtrain Records will be our music shop. I use the shop rack shelving, and using the snap to surface feature, I can then place these guitars on top. And then I think some graffiti on the walls and arches just help complete the look. And oh man, looks really, really cool. The next shop will be a bicycle hire store. So if you want to rent a bike and cycle down towards Santa Monica, you can do that. So I'll just be using a couple of bike racks, and I'll add in all of the bicycles in there too, and we'll just stack a couple of these on top of each other. The next one is just going to be like a standard clothing shop aimed at tourists. This one is simple, I just stack 2 of the clothing racks on top of each other and fill up the entire space. I do change the colours of the clothing on each of the racks just to make them feel a little different. You know, this business, it should have a brand too. So this one should work quite well, I think, Sun Asana. But you know what, so far these have all come out pretty cool. I've got 3 independent shops now. So next up is a brand called Cardio Patio, and I'll turn this into a fitness and sports shop. You'll have somewhere to get your equipment if you want to go have some fun on Venice Beach. I'm using empty trolleys, and then I'll place a bunch of basketballs and footballs in here. I end up using a ton of graffiti on most of the shops. I think this adds a bit more colour to the walls and archways. It is a bit fiddly to get them in there, but you know, they do feel a bit more special now. Next 2 brands are Chachi Threads, so of course this one's going to be another clothing store, maybe a bit more upmarket. And Cheap and Random for the next one. We're just going to fill this one with a lot of cheap and random stuff. This will be more of a general store. I think I found some brooms, some garden shears, there's a chainsaw as well, so yeah, why not, let's just chuck that in there. And I think at this stage I'm just trying to find anything I can just to work here. And then lastly, I'm going to add in like a street food stall, somewhere you can grab a quick bite to eat. So I'm going to reuse the bar I created back in episode 1, in that beach bar I did towards the end of the episode. But look, I did end up deleting that entire beach bar. It was pretty cool, it looked alright, but you know, it just didn't fit the vibe for Venice, so it just had to go. But you know, I didn't want to lose the bar, so I think I'll just reuse it in other ways. So yeah, that's most of the independent businesses along the main street, and I think they came out pretty good. So I'm also going to do a little market area to finish off this part of the strip. These ones will be a bit more arty. Perhaps, you know, some people are selling paintings or other crafts and gifts and things like that. They do put a whole bunch of graffiti all over this. And it looks so good, plastered, completely covered in graffiti. So back on the alley behind the strip we've just created, I am going to add in the homeless encampment here. I think it is important when building cities to include both the good and bad side, especially seeing as I am trying to create an accurate depiction of Venice. Now Venice at the moment does have a homeless crisis. I think with regards to the state of Cities Skylines 2, as you all know, the game is also suffering with a homeless bug. So I think the timing was pretty right for me to include this as a story within the city. I add in a bunch of tents, barrels with fire inside, trash, and just try and make the place feel very run down and dirty. I also add in wooden boards to the windows and doors outside the back of the building, just to make it look abandoned. Maybe people had smashed the windows, so the owners decided to board it up at the back. And I'll also add in a bit more graffiti too, just to add in a little bit more character. The one thing which has been bothering me for a while now is how empty this car park is. Like, there's so many people walking around Venice now, but the car park only has a few cars in it. So finally, I decided to download Asset Packs Manager. Even though the mod has been out for a number of months, I just haven't been able to use it up until now. But you know, I really need these car props to get the look I want. I'll also add in a lot of my new tyre mark decals and the classic stains and damage just to help it all feel a bit more used. And now I have the car props, I'm also going to add in quite a number of police cars to the outside of the LAPD police station, which I've also wanted to do for quite a long time now. So this next part of the build, I'm going to try and match up as many of these buildings on the main Broadwalk to their real life visions as possible. So looking at Google Earth, I think there's a whole bunch of buildings here which I can recreate in the game. First up, there's quite a big blue building here for a number of shops. So let's try and recreate this. So I'm going to use pergolas for the archways, along with storefront props to create the facade. And then once in place, I then just need to find a building which will fit the sizing, and I can just position it behind the facade. And then it's just a case of decorating it all up with props and custom signage. Back to Google Earth, and I can see there's a red building here for the Sidewalk Cafe and a bookstore. So I think I could do something pretty similar to this. For the awning, I use pergolas and I rotate them 45 degrees before using the recolor mod to make them red. And they come out pretty cool. I'm also going to use some of Tygon's decal letters to spell out the name Sidewalk Cafe. So this next build, even though it's very simple, I think is one of my favourites. So just down one of these side roads in real life, there's a tattoo parlour I found. So let's build that in too. The building I use is actually a sub-building, I think, for the taxi depot. It has it's a little garage add-on. So I'm going to use this as my tattoo parlour. And once again, with the power of the recolor mod and decals, I can completely transform how this looks. But you know, there isn't even a door on the side of this building, but luckily Crypto Gamer has released a whole bunch of door decals, so I can put in my own door. And then the whole building I'm just making as dirty and grimy as possible. We of course do also have some custom signage within the base game for tattoo parlours, and I think the neon sign especially just makes it look so cool. And a bunch of posters and graffiti to help it look, you know, a bit more unique. Next up, look, we can't build Venice without giving it a skate shop. I'm going to take inspiration from real life vision. And I've even made a decal of their logo just to help make it a bit more authentic. They actually have quite a bit of a smaller store in real life, but I think, you know, let's give them a bit of a building, help make it a bit more interesting. And once again, I'm going to use the shop racks. I'll just place a whole bunch of the skateboards over the top using the snap to surface feature. So if you are wondering where these skateboards came from, and you might be thinking the same with the bicycles and basketballs you've seen earlier in the episode. So these have been shared on my Discord by Harbourmaster J. These props were all found in the editor, but you know, I believe they are like unfinished assets. I think they're intended to be used with like citizen animations, which of course, you know, haven't been fully implemented into the game yet. So if you want these, they have been shared on my Discord and I'll leave a link in the description. So back to Google Earth. So the entrance to the park has like a painting or a mural on the floor. I did think about creating decals to match this in real life. You know, I've created so many decals already. I thought, you know, maybe I'll just stick to existing assets for this one. So I pretty much placed down every single graffiti and mural decal I can possibly find and lay them all together. I almost don't want each one to be distinguishable and for them all just to like blend in together as one. You know, I think it came out pretty cool. But I did notice later on, I guess due to Z fighting within the game, the decals which were on top were now below, so you know, it all got a little messy. But what I do end up doing is placing a whole bunch of stains and tyre marks on the top of them, just to kind of help blur it all into the floor. So following on from that, I can also show you quite a few graffiti walls I've done throughout Venice. I'm going to use some of the new modest graffiti which I've just released on PDX Mods, and then scatter a whole bunch of the more rougher graffiti in and around them just to help blend it all together. You just layer quite a few of these graffiti all on top of each other, kind of help it feel a bit more natural. So I'm going to leave you now with a bit of a time lapse as I finish this last part of the Broadwalk, and we'll come back for a final few touches and then we can finally get started on the LA28 gig to finish the episode. Okay, so welcome back. So I do have one more unique building I do want to add to the Broadwalk. You might have seen recently that a McDonald's decal pack is now on PDX Mods by KDS. He kindly gave me early access to these so I could add them to Venice. He did such a great job with the entire pack. So even though I don't think Venice has McDonald's, I really wanted just to add this in for a bit of fun. So it is fairly simple to build in using decals on top of the storefront props. How good does all this look? Oh man, you know, I know we don't have custom assets, but this isn't far off, you know. The fact that we can achieve this with just a few decals, you know, is really amazing. I also had a couple of McDonald's posters in my packs, which I previously released, so I'll also add them to this too. So at this point in the build, some new decals and surfaces got shared on my Discord server by Statik Noize, his Real Vision pack. And it's no exaggeration to say my server absolutely blew up over these. Just a few weeks ago, people started sharing some, you know, incredible builds using his new assets. I could quickly see how much they became a crowd favourite, and he absolutely killed it. Here's some incredible decals and surfaces, and so many of them too. But of course, I had to get these into Venice. I think it's the grass and ground ones which make the biggest difference for me. Like I said before, grass is mostly just being a single colour, you know, in game. It's just unrealistic. Grass often would have a lot more variation in colour and shades and things like that. There is grass decals, just help add so much texture and colour to the grass and helps the park look super realistic. All round, he's just done an incredible job with all of these decals. I think he is still working on them, which is probably why they're not on PDX Mods. No doubt they will get there eventually. But if you can't wait, they are available through my Discord and on GitHub, I believe, at the moment, which I have linked down below. So I also decided to add in a few more homeless camps on the beach. Previously, I had only done the one encampment behind the main strip. But I want to add in a few more in and around the park, just add a few more points of interest. So another decal pack recently also dropped on PDX Mods by El Gendo. He created a whole bunch of trash, litter and broken glass. and they're so damn awesome, so I had to get these into the build as well, adding these all in and around the homeless camps. Right, so now we're going to move on to something quite different, but pretty damn awesome, and you'll finally be getting answers to questions some of you have had since episode 1, such as how I'm using citizen props, and how the citizens are doing animations such as gym exercises, yoga and laying down. So over the last month, it's been the first time I've really dived into editor properly. I guess up until then I had been more focused on creating decals and surfaces and things like that. But recently, Harbour Master J has given me a bit of a crash course, and with enough experimentation and quite some disturbing failed attempts along the way, I feel like we have accomplished quite a lot in a short period of time. And these new assets of mine and Jay's will be the primary focus of this last part of the video. I can now show you my brand new and improved Ploppable Citizen packs. So these characters will animate in the idle position indefinitely. I have a few packs lined up for release. The first is all of the base game characters for adults, homeless, elderly, teen and children, and then there's male, female and warm and cold clothing variations for each of those. And I've also created my own unique character set for Los Angeles with 100 unique citizens. So this includes more of an equal amount of white and black people, more overweight people, and they are all wearing more summer clothing as well. So I haven't been able to turn these into walking around fully proper citizens quite yet, but I am speaking with the modder to see if we can get this to work. I've also created a few smaller and more specific packs. So there's a beach citizen pack, which is 15 males and 15 females, all in swimwear, for our beaches and in the sea. There's a basketball citizen pack, which is 15 males, a lot of black guys, a lot of tall guys, and a few shorter ones. There's also a citizen pack for a rock band, modelled after the Red Hot Chili Peppers, which I'm going to be using later in the episode. So far, I can see no performance issues at all using these citizens. I'm pretty sure they're completely good to use. If you want to remove them, you can do so with Better Bulldozer, but you just need to use the radius tool. So I'm not able to go into the entire process on character creation in this video. That will need to be its own video in the future. So these are available if you want to use them, but again, only as a local download for now until official support arrives. So I'm going to use a whole bunch of these now in Venice, so I'll add in the homeless people to the beach and to the encampment. All of these characters really do just help inject so much life into these builds. It's so cool. I'll also add in my new characters to the basketball courts, so I'm going to try and get them in the right colour clothing using the acid variation changer mod. I can cycle through all the different variations, and it takes a bit of time, but eventually you can get 5 players in red and 5 in blue. By the end of this episode, Venice just looks so full of life. I think I mentioned back in episode 1, but Venice is also known to have a lot of street performers along the Broadwalk. Maybe there's a band or a rapper there performing to people. So I'd like to get a small scene in to represent that. So I did create a small set of drums in Acid Editor from a variety of different props, and they came out pretty cool. So I'll add in 2 guitarists and a drummer, and we have a little street performance. And then I'll just add a crowd gathered around listening. Right, so next up I'll show you how we got the custom animations into Muscle Beach and for the yoga. This is totally different to the Ploppable Citizens I showed you just now, but actual citizens, ones would show up and use these assets just like they would with a park. So these have all been created by Harbour Master J, In fact, so much I'm showing you here today is his incredible work. He has been the biggest help to this project for the last month or so the biggest shout out goes to Jay. So I don't know if you've played about with any of these areas in CS2 so far, but you might have noticed that these areas just don't work. But you know, they do when they're inside of a building. So what we did was quite simple. We've made an invisible park. So citizens will use it in the same way as a park, but we can stipulate for what purpose. For example, animations for yoga, jumping jacks, press-ups, or laying down. There's a whole bunch of choice we can use. So Jay has created 14 different activity areas for release. Once plopped, you are also able to extend the surfaces a little bit further and make the area as big as you want. The majority I just plop them where I want, but for the pull-up animation it comes with a particular prop bar which will ensure the citizen does the animation in the correct location. All of these gym animations, it just makes Muscle Beach just that extra little bit special. You know, before it was cool, but it was lifeless. At least now with these animations, it's just so full of life and so much going on, which is exactly what I want for my Muscle Beach gym. But we did find with these park areas, you know, that people will only use them for a short period of time. It's like they're recharging their entertainment levels. But ideally in some cases, you know, I would like people to stay there much longer. So where do people spend more time? Well, at home, at work. So this next asset is going to be similar to the activity areas, but rather than making a park, we're going to do it with a residential building, and one with a large capacity, say about 200 homes, so a lot of people. So we're going to use this now on the beach and for the gig. The people, in theory, should spend a lot more time in these areas. So as this is a residential building, it does need road access and the normal services. So we did figure out a little trick. So you first need to plop the beach entrance on a road, and then we'll just wait for citizens to show up. And once they do, we can then use Move It and move this onto the beach, far away from any roads. And citizens can still access it just through invisible paths. You'll see all these people originally near the road where we first plopped the assets. They will now all walk towards this new location. And you know, even once it's there, new people will still come and go. Even after this initial batch of people, it still fully functions. So once it's in its new location, I can then drag out the areas to help fill up the entire beach. These assets certainly aren't perfect, so I have found people to kind of congregate in the corners and in lines, especially at first, but you know, things do eventually settle down a little bit. And I do use a better bulldozer just to help break up the lines, which I think does the trick and help it feels a bit more natural. Okay, so for the final part of this episode, we're finally going to get started on the LA28 gig. Now, if you don't know, this gig actually happened in real life just a few short weeks ago at the Olympics closing ceremony. From France, they crossed over to live at Venice Beach, and the Red Hot Chili Peppers performed to the crowd. So this event, I think it happened around episode 1 of the series, and it was just too cool not to try and recreate. I think a lot of this is only possible thanks to Jay, who also, by the way, did all of the Hollywood-style floating letters which you've seen in my opening cinematics. Jay probably created around 50 assets for this gig alone, and they look so similar to real life too. He did such an incredible job with all of these. Everything from the stage, the stairs, the lifeguard tower, the drums, the amps, even the smoke machines and the lighting. All of it is just so exceptionally well done. Okay, so on screen you can see me building out the stage, and it's just looking so cool. Oh man, I just love this so much already. And it's so close to real life too. You know, the poles, the stairs configuration, you know, the drums and the amps with their like lighting underneath and raised up on that platform. It's pretty much exactly how it is in real life. For the amps, I even created a decal of a Marshall guitar amp to the size of these AC vents Jay picked out, which works so well. And the other amp with the Ashtrain Records neon sign is just perfect too. A lot of these very small props, they're things like dog poles and newspaper vending machines which are sunken into the ground, so you're only seeing the tops. And then I'll add in the band, and they've been created, like I said, to look as close to the Red Hot Chili Peppers as possible. I think they came out pretty good. Flea with his bald head and his dungarees, and that looks like frontman Anthony Kiedis too, I think. So I'm really happy with how they all came out. So now the stage is done, you know, I move on to the things like the security perimeter fence, and I'll build out some food stalls and all of the facilities you'd expect from a gig like this. so I think it's time to let some people in. So I'm going to use a pretty similar way to how we did it for the beach. And it's basically an invisible, high-capacity residential building, which has areas inside of it, and these areas allow animations. And for the gig, we've selected jumping jacks and selfies. So one area should be people jumping around, and others will be more standing around and taking selfies. So as I want to move this off a road, like before, I need to place these first on the road, let people move in, and once they do that, I can then drag it into position using Move It. So once it's in the correct position, I'll just extend the areas out to make them fill the entire area of the gig. And I've created like 5 or 6 of these buildings, so I'll use them all to fill up as much of the space as possible. Of course, people do end up standing in lines, but you know, that's not going to be too much of an issue for this, as I will use my Ploppable Citizens to fill in the gaps. These should also help slightly hide the people doing jumping jacks and help make it feel a little bit more natural. So it's just a case now of going around and filling up the space with as many citizens as possible. You know, this job definitely was one of the most tedious ones I've done to complete, but you know, necessary to get the final look, and I think the result does make it all worthwhile. So a few people on my Discord have asked me already, you know, what's performance like plopping so many of these citizens down in such a small space? Honestly, you know, I can't see much difference, if any, in performance. Whether that is the same for someone on a low-end computer, I'm not sure. So yeah, that's pretty much it for today's episode. And I think I'm going to need to do a live play with you all in the next video just to show you around, to give you a proper showcase of Venice and talk about the build and future plans. This episode is already crazy long, it's basically 2 episodes in one, and we don't have time for any more. But we've got an absolute insane amount of stuff done today, and to have Venice finally complete, a project which I started back in January and left it unfinished for such a long time, I can finally rest. But I am glad I waited, because with all of the mods and assets we have now, it just made it so much better than anything I could have done before. Like, I could have never achieved this back in January. But you know, this is only the start of the series, even though it kind of feels like the end, at least the end of this chapter, because my god, it has taken me so long to get here. You know, I have got plans for what's coming next, although nothing has been built yet. There is one more build I should do in Venice before I leave, not on the beach. And then after that, I think I'm going to move to a completely different part of LA. So where would you like to see me build next? But in the immediate future, as some of you know, I am off to Finland next week with lots of other content creators to meet Paradox and Colossal Order. So this could be very exciting to meet everyone and, you know, see what we'll be getting up to when we're out there. So interested to see what comes out of it and what all of our plans will be after that trip. So very, very interesting times ahead. So if you enjoyed the video, please like, comment and share, all of that good stuff. And I'll catch you all again in the next video.